Hey TechKnowStuds, I just created this cool new tool to cover the summary of network fundamentals. So I'm pretty excited about it. And when you dig into this allows you to be able to see everything from a really high standpoint and dig down deep into it. So it gets both aspects and it really sees how everything kind of intertwines together. So to get this tool, I'll put a link down below on how to get to this resource. But this is the network fundamentals summary tool that I created. It's a web page, and I've got just first of all a general TCP/IP communication and the flow of TCP/IP communication. I have how you connect a computer to a switch and what happens there, and then also what happens when you go to a website. And then I also have this reference diagram here so you can see a visual of how everything is connected. So within this tool, you can open up and start drilling down to see certain pieces of information. Like you want to see how information flows from the demo laptop to the web server, then you'll be able to open this up and see what the flow of data looks like. Or if you want to see the DHCP process and what the DHCP process looks like, or if you want to see what how going to a website looks like. So you get into, let's say, the DNS lookup, and you open the DNS lookup, and then this is what your machine does to do a DNS lookup. And then if it needs to go to a server, you can open that up and it communicates it by making a DNS request. And then that server will do a DNS response, and then you'll add the client will then add the response to the cache, so it doesn't have to continually ask the DNS server for that information. That server has a certain process that it uses to look up its information. So it will go through a process of looking up the cache, looking up the internal DNS zone, any forwarders, any root hints. If it has to go to a root hints, then what it does is it goes through a process to figure out what is the authoritative domain for a certain site. And I gave you an example of google.com. And so it will go to the root server, then it'll go to the top level server, then it'll go to the domain server. And then each one of these, when it communicates with each one of these, it needs to route the information to it. So you open up this, and then it will route the information by making a DNS request. And then that root server will do a lookup process, and then there's a response. And then if you want to dig down further and see what happens with the DNS request and how it gets routed to that server, then this is the process that it goes through, from the application on the demo laptop to the assembling the layer 4 and 3, going through the Ethernet process to get it to the router, and what the router does with it, the routing process that the router does with it, and then it goes from the router then to the next router. It's got to go through another Ethernet process or whatever layer 2 connectivity it has. So you can open this up and see what that looks like. You can take a look and see what it means. It needs to determine a MAC address. So you can open up the MAC address and see what that looks like, and see what the routing table looks like, see what the ARP process looks like, and if it needs to go and do an ARP request and do an ARP resolution, then what that process looks like with the ARP request and ARP response. And then you can dig down into the ARP request and see what the ARP request looks like, and it needs to assemble a packet and the frame assembly, and then it goes through the switch processing. So what it does to assemble the frame, and then what it does to on the switch, and the switch will do some buffering. So it explains what the switch does with buffering. It'll explain what the switch does with the learning process, and what the switch will do with forwarding, and how it makes the determination of it forwarding. So it talks all about the switch processes. And then it gets into the packet and frame disassembly. And so what happens when it gets to the other machine. And then it needs to return that, whatever device is we're going to respond to that, it needs to return. And so it'll go through that process again. So you can really dig down and you can see things from a high level, what it looks like, and dig down into the more granular level. So really hope this tool will help out. I have a link down below on how to get to this tool. And I'll also post some videos stepping you through some of this process. But this, I'm hoping, is going to be an awesome tool that's going to help a lot of people with understanding big ideas of how all this information flows, as well as the granular ideas of how really the data gets from one location to the next. So feel free to check that out, and good luck.